As a matter of fact, that's what it looks like right out in the front. So we're going to be talking about diggers and all this morning. First of all, the way the plant swap works is they're all numbered, and we're going to pass a little thing around, and you can grab a number, and whatever number you get, that's the plant you get whether you like it or not. Whether you want it or not, whether you already, if you brought it, you still get it, because the plant swap happens later, you know. And the whole idea of a plant swap is to get plants, is to get weird plants and weird people in the same spot. A lot of times non-joiners, you know, not horticulture, not master gardeners, not garden club, but people who don't join stuff can feel comfortable because this part of that big tent we call gardening. And I'm going to talk about that. Y'all hear though? Can you hear okay? Okay. Before we get started, let me mention this. I'm the first person in the state to get one of these. I don't sell anything, but I play a lot. And I got the brand new Lego set. It's floral design. It's made for 18 and older. It's got lots of little parts kids can put up their noses. But ain't it cool? I'm going to make flower arrangements out of Lego. And I can put them in the back of my truck. So anyway, just want to throw that out. I wanted to start out this morning by just showing a handful of slides before we get into the regular program. I'll start with my truck there. But a lot of y'all know I'm with Mississippi Public Broadcasting. I do an hour a week. That's all I do. That's the main thing I do every week. Write newspaper columns and all like that. But it's the most fun thing because I don't even have to be dressed, you know, and I can have fun. And it's because I don't sell anything and I don't try to be the know-it-all person. I get a chance to learn stuff and share stuff that I was trained, that I experienced. I work at garden centers and that I've heard other people do. And there's a lot of things I've heard and seen all of my life that everybody understands and believes is simply not true. Like eggshells for tomatoes. Everybody knows eggshells help tomatoes, except they don't at all. But it makes people feel good, and I'm all about that. So anyway, every week I bring in, if y'all hear my program, I bring in something to talk about every week, a little show and tell, and I'll take a picture of an heirloom plant, an edible plant, and a native plant. So I just want to have a lot of fun. But I want to let y'all know the kind of gardener I am. This is my stumpery. Some people have rock gardens. Ain't no rocks in Jackson, but I got a lot of stumps. So I just stack stumps up, put a water guard, tuck shade plants around it, and it's my stumpery in a place that's too shady for anything else. See, so it's not something I came up with on my own. It's something I saw in England. They have them in St. All the botanic gardens have little stumperies now. It's an old 1850s horticultural oddity. And if you're scared of lizards and snakes and stuff like that, just don't go there. But it's just one of those oddball little things a lot of people don't think about doing. Yesterday, I made a real bad mistake, and I feel bad. And I got hollered at by my partner in England. She was listening to the program. She said, "You interview the Van Zyverden Brothers marketing person who sell 19 million tulip bulbs a year, and you said you think tulips suck." Okay. And I couldn't pull it back. And I don't think they suck. But they last about as long as a beer and cost about the same as a beer. But anyway, the point I was trying to make is do things because you enjoy them, not because they have long-term rewards. And if tulips make you happy, if they bloom for one day, they are worth it. My neighbor had some that she worked really hard planted them. And when they bloomed, they were fantastic that day. And it rained that night and all the petals fell off. Months of waiting and the petals fell off. So I'm a guerrilla gardener. I do stuff that you know you're not supposed to do. I sneak around at night. So I sneak around and I put these in her flower bed. I don't know if y'all noticed, but those tulips are made out of egg carton. Now, maybe I'm wrong. I don't know, but it was a lot of fun. That's my truck. Y'all saw it out there. But somebody told me on the radio yesterday when I was broadcasting here at the Max that there was a truck in Meridian that has vegetables growing in it. Any of y'all, it's automotive, a transmission. It's over right by the, 3rd and something. Anyway, behind the transmission place, they got a truck with lettuce growing in it. So it's not just me is what I'm saying. And not only that, but I noticed that they've got a box full of some dirt where they're probably going to try another thing. So anyway, people say, I can't garden. I don't have a place to garden. Well, I'm thinking, we grow stuff in a pickup truck. If you could have a box of dirt and grow stuff you can eat, maybe plant some tulips in between. then it works for me. How many of y'all seen this? Anybody here anybody not know what this is? It's okay. It's a grave in Rose Hill Cemetery, not between here and the community college, and that's the king of the gypsies and the queen of the gypsies grave. People come from all over the world and lay little tchotchkes, little coins and cigarettes and odds and ends at this because it's just part of a community. And they're scattered all over the world, down through history, up and down and around. But people still make the homage to do that. And that's the way gardening is in a lot of ways. So I just want to show that. I want to show this picture because I took it last week. This is in Kosciuszko, Mississippi. The lady who lived there was named L.V. Hull. Oh, I'm going to show a picture of what it looked like when she was alive. But I just want to let you know, this is what the house looked like before she moved in it, and this is what it looked like after she passed away. But while she was here on earth, and this garden is celebrated worldwide, it's got people all over the world know about it. That's what it looked like when she passed away, but before she did, this is what it looked like. Was she? Wonderful lady. She would sing to you. She would sing to you. Wonderful. And what's that? Yeah. I had a picture of her garden in my first big book, Pass Along Plants. First picture in the book is of her garden. Because if you take away all the stuff, she has something in bloom every month of the year. It was a garden that tended to be over-accessorized. Okay? It's like my daughter. My daughter's got a lot of ink and a lot of piercings. Love her. She's a beautiful woman, but she over-accessorizes. She's still my girl. Okay, so I'm just saying that once you get past the stuff, you find that there's real humanity. You know what I'm saying? She's good as gold. So anyway, we're going to be talking about Maverick gardeners today. And I just want to mention that in it I have an essay about the 4 women, my mother, showing my little girl, my daughter, how to pick up a pecan, my granny who was from between Kilmichael and Stewart, her greatest pride and joy was her zinnias and a concrete chicken. That's all she had. But she loved them. She had mother-in-law tongue is snake plant. She had one that was her pot was wrapped in kitchen tinfoil because she thought it purdied them up. But she was proud of it, and I learned that from her. My other grandmother, Louise, was a garden club lady with blue ribbons of flower arrangements, her hybridized daylilies, her African violets. She taught me about the finesse, about how to get along with other people, how to jump through hoops to get awards. And I appreciated that. My great-grandmother, when I was 10 years old, she called me little professor. She was giving a presentation on growing herbs during World War II, and this picture's made. But she was a horticulturist and taught me about collecting and about holding your head up. She would grow native plants and wildflowers before they were cool. And the other garden club ladies talked bad about her. Why do you want to grow that old wild honeysuckle? The native azalea? Well, back then it was just old wild honeysuckle. So anyway, each of them had a different approach, and I absorbed all of it, different approaches. So I'm easygoing when it comes to people doing what they want to do. Probably the best example, I'm going to show pictures of the garden of diggers, is a guy named Dr. Dirt. Anybody ever meet Dr. Dirt? He was my co-host when I started the program on MPB. Now, for 10 years, we traveled around the country. We went to 22 states. He wouldn't fly. We drove in my truck, 22 states. I lectured at the Philadelphia Flower Show, Texas, all over the place. And he didn't have one iota of horticulture training, but he had the most incredible garden with stuff growing. Every week of the year, he brought in a flower bouquet for 4 years. Every week he brought in a flower bouquet of stuff he cut from his garden that day. Rain, shine, snow, whatever. And he loved to share plants and lore with people. So he represented the kind of people that I'm calling keepers of the flame. They're collecting plants, they're sharing them, they're nurturing them when they come and go in fashion, and also the lore, how to grow stuff in just plain what he called D-I-R-T, dirt. Didn't call it soil. He said you soil your pants. Okay? So I'm just saying that there's different levels of gardening. Horticulture is real left brain, production oriented, trying to get something, a yard of the month, blue ribbon, fill your freezer, perfect lawn, whatever you do that has a goal oriented, horticulture and the techniques and all that can help you. But gardening is right brain. We grow it just because we love it. And it doesn't matter if we enjoy the journey. So a process versus product. And every one of us is somewhere in between. So anyway, let me get down to, let's see if I can get rid of this and see if this works. And push this. Yay! Y'all see that okay? Garden means a guarded area. That's where the word comes, gordos, became courtyard. Horticulture, court, guard, garden, yard. And if you don't feel like you're in a special place when you're going your garden, then it's just another landscape. Might as well be two-dimensional. So a real garden is going to, when you're there, you feel like you're apart from the world. You're in a guarded area. And that's in the heart and the mind as well as physically. I spent a lot of time looking at different ways people garden, and some are just really focused on stuff. Some are just love to learn and love to share. And that's what we're going to talk about today. Dr. Dirt shared a lot of plants, and we found out real quick, it doesn't matter who you are, who your mom and them are, whether you vote or not, what you think about this or that or the other, what church you go to or don't go to. Plants don't care. They are equal, more than food. Not everybody, I like ketchup. Some people don't. Some people eat mushrooms, but gardening is something that we can all share because it's a level playing field. I think that's really important. I write for a living. I do a lot of traveling and a lot of, around. But part of the year I live in a place called England, a little island, which, by the way, England will fit inside Mississippi. How many of y'all knew that? It'll fit inside Mississippi. Well, Scotland's up there like Tennessee or something, okay, or Kentucky or whatever. And London is down around Hattiesburg. I live up around Clarksdale. And you go to Memphis, you're in Glasgow, Scotland. See, so it's a little place, but they've been gardening for a long time. They're an island. They have to support themselves. They still have that mentality. And I do a lot of walking. I belong to a walking club since the 1890s. I've been walking. And so I get to look at all these little villages and behind the scenes and people gardening and looking over their back fences, and found out that they garden just like we do. They dig a hole, they put something in it green side up and hope it works. If it doesn't, they try to figure it out. And if they can't figure it out, they pull it up, stick something else in the hole. And, they found out what grows well in England. Here, we're still trying to make stuff. We're still trying to grow lilacs, which don't like it in the South, or bananas. We have a huge country, and we think we can do anything. They have this idea that we're in this place. Let's find out what grows well here. And if it doesn't grow well here, it's not for us. And I've seen some nice gardens. Really nice gardens. What you want to bet the lady who lives there doesn't do her weeding herself? Probably not. But this is my little garden, one of my little gardens in the backyard. It's a raised bed. It's about this big by this big. But I've got peas and basil and thyme and other stuff. I even brought some bottles from Mississippi to put out there. And it's a little garden, but it is meaningful to me is the huge estate gardens that I cover for magazines, because that's my stuff. And when something dies, I'm responsible for it living or not, or replacing it. See, so gardening, again, is a little small thing, and you can replicate it as much as you want to. This is what my garden in England looked like in the wintertime. Every time, it's going to be snowing there tomorrow. But my bottle tree kept my spirits up when everything else is covered in snow. Does that make sense to y'all? And a lot of people say, what's up with the bottles? I'm thinking, what's up with you hanging stuff out of holes in your ears? Same thing to me. It gives me something to enjoy. And I've seen plants that won't grow here. They have wild lupins. They won't grow in Mississippi. We have a lupin, but it's not quite that pretty. I tell people I'm from the Delta, just south of Memphis a little bit, and they think it's kind of cool. It doesn't matter where you go in the world. They don't know New Orleans. They don't know Memphis. They don't know Kentucky. But they all know Mississippi. From Japan to Europe, to South America, they've all heard of Mississippi. Of course, they always ask me if I've ever been to the Delta, right? I flunked out of Mississippi Delta Junior College. How Delta is that? I'm a retired college professor, and I flunked out of junior college. But anyway, it's really cool. We're in a place that people... they love our music, they love our cuisine, they love our accent, they love all that stuff. And the reason I mention that because the Max has concentrated that experience for us to appreciate, because we're spread all over the state, but the Max has pulled it all into one spot. And when I'm in England, I pull it all in one spot. I represent not America, but Mississippi. And I think that's a whole lot better than trying to represent the whole country, because y'all know what I mean. My dad loved to cook. That's part of our sharing thing. There's a lady in my hometown who used to spray paint numbers on her elephant ears. Anybody know what those numbers are? Any idea? Anybody want to guess? Are y'all awake? I wasn't sure. I knocked on the door because that's the way I am. I figure if you spray paint stuff, you're used to people knocking on your door. Yeah. It turned out she said 2 words, just like LV Hull, the one with all the shoes. I said, why do you do this? And she pulled herself up. Was she about that tall? And she said, because I'm not like all of them. Well, this lady said to her, she said, them's NASCAR. She loved her NASCAR so much she spray painted her favorite car driver's numbers on her elephant ears. And that's not horticulture. That's not horticulture. This is my yard from the street in Jackson. I couldn't live in some neighborhoods. They wouldn't let me live there because you can't see my yard from the street. But from the house looking out towards the street, this is what you see. Let me back it up. It looks weird from there, but that's the back of my fence. But this is where I garden. And I don't know if you could notice, but I've got I'll make sure I push the right button. I got a little herb garden over here in a horse trough. But a lot of circles, no grass. I'm a turf specialist, and I don't have a blade of grass in my yard because I learned in 1970, just say no to grass. And this is what my garden looks like in the wintertime. And everybody else has nothing but just grass out there, nothing but grass. I live in a little cabin in the backyard because I travel so much. I rent my house out to female medical students because they won't mess up my floors like guys would. I'm sorry, I'm sexist here, but guys are going to mess up my hardwood floors. So anyway, I live in a little cabin back there, and it's a kind of a fun little place. I grow all sorts of plants come and go. And when you have a garden like this, if something dies, nobody can tell, which is kind of a cool little trick. There's my stumpery from another angle. I'm from the Delta, so I like Spanish moss. This is the kind of stuff I have in my stumpery. Plain old monkey grass, but it's elevated to being special with a log with some old lichens and some shade-loving plants. Little details. If you take a yard that's got all this stuff on it and crank it down and look at it through a toilet paper roll, you'll see what these people, we see in our garden. We don't see the whole thing. We see little vignettes everywhere. And where the neighbors, they see the whole thing. I give them a toilet paper roll, and that helps them understand a little bit better. I grow lettuce and parsley and multiply onions in a hanging basket because I think it's pretty. And a lot of people say, well, they've got nothing in a hanging basket because they're whatever froze last year. Well, when it dies, I plant something in the wintertime. By the way, when you hang it up, the snails can't get to it. The dog can't pee on it. If you give me a squirt bottle of vinaigrette, I don't even have to bend over to eat it. Okay? It's easy to do. See, so I'm just saying, a lot of people say, I don't have time for a room or whatever for a garden. That is a food garden. It's also a herb garden. It's also an ornamental garden in a little spot. So I'm encouraging people, especially those with children, to do small stuff. Okay? There's my horse trough, 6 foot diameter, cheaper than a pot. You go to the farm co-op, you can get a big pot. A lot cheaper than you can buy a bunch of middle-sized pots at a garden center. I'm just saying. Even my little truck. And I tell people, if you can do that, then you can do what's in the back of my truck. And if you can do that, you can do a flower bed in your yard. In other words, it's just taking a little simple combination and extrapolating. I accessorize it. I got a little bottle tree in it right there because that's just the way I am. Just the way I am. Anyway. Wyatt Waters painted my truck. Y'all hear of Wyatt Waters? He did my truck. I asked him if he would do, he did do it for me. I asked him if he would do a little thing on my grandmother's concrete chicken. How much you do my granny's chicken for me? He said, oh, Felder, for you, a couple of $1,000. I'm thinking, no, thank you, but, I think I'll spend an extra $3.95 and get me a can of spray paint and spruce her right up. In my little neighborhood, I like to grow stuff in weird places. This is a pothole. I live way up the top of the hill. It's only 3 blocks long, but I planted it in a pothole even. just to prove that you can garden anywhere. So anyway, you're getting this idea here. By the way, this is my mother. She had a little greenhouse, and that's what she looked like when she was a little bit older. You know the sound. This is old school. You know the sound a switch makes? My mother can make that sound with her eyes. I couldn't believe it. And Granny, my other grandmother, and my great-grandmother. They all influenced me with their different styles. My great-grandmother in 1917, she wrote in her journal about all the things she remembered from her childhood, from her grandmother's garden. This is 1917. And she called me little professor when I was 10. I knew this woman. She wrote about all the plants that grew on either side of the front gate, remembered because of all the memories associated with these plants. And she remembered one in particular, this one right here. And this is the only one in that whole journal that she colored. Anybody know what that is? What? It looks right. It's spiderwort. It's spiderwort. It's this plant. The one that y'all keep trying to kill. You know, Roundup won't kill this stuff. Roundup just bees up or rolls off. And that rose had black spot. But she put the rose and the spiderwort together and carried it in her bouquet to church. And she said the combination is what works. You know, yeah, the spiderwort's kind of weedy, but it's a great native wildflower. And the rose didn't look that great. But she put together what I call a Rumpelstiltskin garden. Remember Rumpelstiltskin? Wove golden garments out of what? Common straw. Golden garments out of common straw. And isn't that what we're doing in our gardens? That's what we're trying to do. If you want to get a blue ribbon, my great-grandmother was a garden club lady, but she wasn't a blue ribbon type of person. She was always the horticulture chair. She didn't give a flip about blue ribbons. She said, if you want to get a blue ribbon, it's not what you know, it's not actually what you do, it's how you figure out ahead of time what the judges are looking for and delivering that. And if you want to do that, you can get a blue ribbon. I don't do that. It just doesn't bother me anymore. When my father passed away, I made this bouquet. This was in January. Camellia japonica, pink perfection. That's Narcissus tazetta. Y'all call them paper whites. And the berries of Nandina domestica. Just want to let you know I can do the Latin thing if we have to. But I put them together the day my dad died. And I think it looks okay. But the nice part about it, they look good in the yard too. The big camellia with the flowers, the little skirt of feathery Nandina, like heavenly bamboo and then that skirt of fragrant paper whites. And the thing about it, I made that flower in January when our friends up north and in England are covered in undulating mounds of the snow. We had something blooming. And not only it looked good here, it looked good in the yard, but get this, every one of those plants is my dad's yard, who got it from his mother-in-law, who got it from her mother-in-law. My great-grandmother planted this stuff before my dad was even born. And all these years later, it's still performing out there with no care at all. And so I'm telling you, you find a plant in a cemetery, there's a rose right across from the King of the Gypsies' grave. You find a wildflower, you find different plants that are all tough as nails that anybody can grow. And you pull them together in a combination, and you got a garden that looks good. And you can do that without a lot of sprays and horticulture and stuff like that. I'm going to touch on three topics as we wind up towards the diggers. One is pass along plants. We can't be really good gardeners without plants that come from these plants right here. Okay, this plant, who brought this little sedum? Is it hard to grow? You got to water it, right? Spray it, divide it every few years. Got to bring it in the wintertime? No. And it has pretty little yellow flowers in the spring, right? And every little piece of it will root. Okay? This is the kind of plant that I want to grow because I'm busy, I'm tired, I'm old. When I bend over, I see sparkly things, and I'm gone a lot. So I want plants that do really well. I've got some of that growing in a little depression on a rock in my yard. See? So the more values the plant has, pretty, easy, tasty, compact, heirloom, you stole it from somebody that brings back good memories. And the more values a plant has, the more different kind of people want to grow it. See, if it just has one thing, azaleas are good for one thing, boom, and then they're just big green meatballs. And that's enough for some people. But what if it also had fruit on it and good fall colors? The more values, the more people are going to want to grow it. Second of all, it's got to grow pretty well without a whole bunch of care. If you got to mess with it, not many people are going to grow it. So the easier it is, the more different people are going to grow it. A few bells and whistles. And third of all, it's got to be easy to propagate. See these big snowball bushes around town? They're pretty easy to propagate. So anyway, the easier it is to share, the more people are going to grow it. So these are the three parts, the triad of pass along plants. And that's what these plants represent. By the way, this one right here, who brought this? Well, and you call it Queen's Tear. Long arching things of red and yellow. It's a bromelia, probably the easiest bromelia there is to grow. And divide, you said you got it at a plant swap? It doesn't look like much, but when it blooms, it is super special. And you can't buy this anywhere. You got to get it from somebody who got it from somebody. So that's the idea of pass along plants. So like friendship yeast, friendship bread, that's a plant. Well, it's a yeast. Yeast is a plant, right? I don't know. Anyway, that's the idea. My great-grandmother had this night blooming cereus. When it bloomed, she made us sit on the porch and wait for it to open at night. And it didn't bloom that night. We had to come back the next night. But it's the coolest little plant, and you break a little piece off and it roots. Any of y'all grow night blooming cereus? It's really, really easy to share from little pieces of cuttings. Cotton used to be brown before they bred it to be white so they could dye it khaki colored. And I still grow a lot of heirloom plants that like my climate. How about rosemary? Any of you grow rosemary? How hard is that to grow? You can cut it, and this is something the children can do. You can take a piece of rosemary about this long, strip the bottom leaves off, and put it in a glass of water, and in 3 weeks it's going to have roots. And you can put it where you have to brush through it to get into your house. It makes you smell better. Heirloom tomatoes, I love them, but I can't grow tomatoes. I'll explain that a little bit. But there's a lot of reasons for growing heirloom plants, a lot of different reasons. But not because they're pretty, but because they're interesting, and there's variety out there. See, and if it weren't for certain kinds of people growing these things and saving the seeds, we'd end up with nothing but better boy, early girl, and celebrity. Because that's what the wholesalers grow. These are the things that we keep going. Different kinds of okra. Gosh, I got all different kinds of okra. I grow one called burgundy. It's pretty. I don't even like okra. You can't fry it hard enough and put enough ketchup on it for me to eat okra. But it's a hibiscus that's from Africa. It loves hot, dry weather. The more miserable our summer gets, the better this plant grows. And I like that. I like it. Little heirloom chili pequeños, they will light you up. Kale in the wintertime, this is not collards. It's the kind of kale that the Tuscans used to make minestrone for 300 years. And it's pretty. It'll take 10 below zero. So in the wintertime, when a few people got little pansies out there, I got this stuff. And you can eat it when you're tired of looking at it. I'm going to touch on the daylilies a little bit later, but this is at the sign for the American Horticultural Society. I'm a board member, and we can put any plant we wanted by our sign, any plant. And every plant society wanted their precious little baby there. We went with this because either you like it or you don't. But it's easy to grow, it's easy to share. And by the way, this plant is grown all over the world, and it doesn't set seed. Every time you see this orange outhouse, ditch bank, old thing, it came from somebody who got it from somebody. For 3,000 years, this plant has been grown for food. It's got as much vitamins in those buds as broccoli. Not making this up. Anyway, so we went with that because we want to show people that horticulture and gardening is a big tent, not just for fancy folks. And 3 reasons we grow this. It's pretty enough. It's evocative. It's a quarter mile from a hose, and none of us is going to waddle down there and water it. And third of all, ain't nobody going to steal it because you either got it or you don't. Anyway, daylilies, and I mentioned that in this book. I looked at plants growing all over the world, been to 5 continents studying gardens, and everywhere I go all over the world, I see roses and irises and chrysanthemums and, a lot of, but the plant that is the most commonly grown in botanic gardens and cottage gardens all over the world, the number 1 pass-along plant is this right here. And the only place you're not going to find it in America is in the Daylily Society garden because it's that ugly old outhouse ditch bank lily. But I celebrate it because every time you see this, it has connections that go back 3,000 years. And I think that's kind of cool. And by the way, you can fry the buds, and they taste just like fried broccoli. Or you can put them in soup. You can eat them raw. Any way you eat broccoli, you can eat this plant. I like plants that are so tough that dead people can grow them. And I grow a lot of those in my yard, a lot of that kind of stuff. 4 o'clocks that reminded me of my great-grandparents. My great-grandmother's daffodil, 350 daffodils. These are the only ones still blooming. Those are the ones that I want in my yard because they work. And this is where you get these kind of old-fashioned plants. It's not the ones you sell in the garden centers, which may or may not bloom more than once, but these are the ones that are dependable. We've got them all around us. I could go on and on and on, on and on and on about the kind of plants I see in your gardens that nobody buys. Any of y'all grow this? It's the it's the red amaryllis. Who grows it? Did you buy it? And you don't do anything to it, right? This is crinum, milk and wine lily. You know, if you want to dig one of these up, you better bring your lunch. As far as we know, none of these have ever died. And the folk name for this one's called milk and wine lily, but it's crinum. Some people might say crinum, crinum, I don't know. But the one, it comes in all white or that wine colored. I've got all of them, but this one they call milk and wine lily. Red spider lilies, y'all know these kind of plants. Chrysanthemum, any of y'all grow this? What do you call it? Some people call it country girl. Some people call her Clara Curtis. Her name is Clara Curtis, but if I were to whisper Clara Curtis, and you whisper it, by the time it comes all the way about, it always becomes country girls. This is a special type of chrysanthemum. It's not like any other chrysanthemum on earth. There's just one little group of these. They got a lot of varieties, and they all go kind of sprawly, but they will grow in a cemetery. They never fail to bloom. You don't have to do anything to them. Y'all will grow it. You're right. What if I were to tell you that Clara isn't the only one, that I've collected all different kinds, from Oklahoma to South Carolina to Japan to all over the place, and they all grow just like that. And if you had this in your yard, before you know it's going to be in their yard, first thing you know, the whole town lights up with it. So I'm just saying, we've got some cool plants that not many people know about. I made this arrangement, believe it or not, I got a lot of these flowers from right up the street here, right across from the farmer's market. It's like a ditch or something. I don't know what the building is, but it got like a drainage thing. Okay, and right in front of it, they plant all different kinds of stuff. All of these are in the same family as hibiscus, and they all grow in just plain old dirt in Mississippi. So I'm just saying, we got a lot of cool plants out there. My favorite rose called Mutabilis. I want to skip through all this stuff. We grow roses in a cemetery downtown Jackson. No water, we fertilize them maybe this much fertilizer every 3 or 4 years. They get pruned back every 3 or 4 years just to show that they're roses that will bloom all the time with no care. American beautyberry, we have so many wonderful native plants. Every one of these grows in Lauderdale County, every one of them. But you've got to go to England to take a picture of them growing in a nice garden for some reason. All of these are native to Mississippi. I had to take this picture in Italy because a lot of people call them weeds. You don't want that old weed. And then here's the corner of my yard, looking towards my neighbor's house. My neighbor's got a nice house. Can't see mine. But these are wildflowers that bloom in the fall when everybody else has got just nothing but grass out there being mowed. And then I saw this in southern England at a really fancy garden. They took our wildflowers and they put a piece of split rail fence out there to make it look naturalistic. So if you don't grow weeds in your yard, put a fence out there. People think you know what you're doing. I mean, that's all you got to do. Let me skip through some of this. Our state flower, magnolia, this is a little gem. It fits in anybody's yard. Anyway, second thing, the pass-along plants, y'all get that, right? They knit us together. When you see these plants, we are all part of a fabric. Okay. As far as growing them, there's this thing called slow food, and it's sort of the opposite of fast food. You go to fast food. Well, this is something my dad made. One of the last meals he cooked for me, as a matter of fact, before he passed away. Cornbread, homegrown tomatoes, basil, black-eyed peas with bacon. My doctor says I can't eat bacon anymore. I shouldn't eat bacon. So I just use a little bacon grease. But this is a meal that says South. You're not going to find this in Italy. You're not going to find it in Ecuador. You're not going to find it in California. This is our comfort food. And whether you like it or not, it represents who we are collectively. And that's what slow food is about, doing things that have a history of working well. These all grow perfectly well here. My great-grandmother had these flower frogs. You know these flower frogs? When she died, my grandmother, the concrete chicken lady, she got them, and she didn't know what to do with them. So she put them in a box. When she died, my mother got them. I'm thinking, there's a pattern here. When my mother was literally on her deathbed, I'm not making this up, 2 days, I went to her house and I stole every one of them. Because they're cool, they're antiques, and I use them. But get this, only one person at a time can own those flower frogs because they're physical possessions. They're heirlooms, which comes from inherited loom. Inherited tool, heirloom. But everybody can have a piece of my great-grandmother's fig because she showed me how to root them. And my kids know how to. My kids are growing figs, both of them, from their great-great-grandmother's garden. And I'm the only one with their flower frog. My kids are going to get them one of these days. But this is something that, we do as a society. When times are lean, you can buy maple syrup from Vermont at every Piggly Wiggly in Lauderdale County. But you got to know somebody getting homemade fig preserves. And so this is something I do. I make lots of the little yuppie half-pint things. Excuse me, the half pint, the little bitty things. You only get like 5 figs in there. And I use them as gifts when I go overseas. I have 2 things in my backpack, fig preserves and Tabasco sauce, because you can't get those anywhere. Anyway, so that's what that slow gardening is about. It's not lazy. Slow gardening, not lazy. Hybridizing daylilies, perfect lawn. Anything where you're focused on it is slow gardening. I can show you lazy. It's not about lazy or taking your time. It's about relaxing and doing things through all the seasons. This is what it's more like. Sitting on a swing in the evening with a cup of coffee or a glass of wine, relaxing, getting in the swing, noticing when the fireflies start doing those things, hearing the neighbors' dishes clink, savoring evening fragrances, taking your time and enjoying stuff. That's what slow gardening is. It's doing what you want to do, not what your neighbors think you got to do. Not going to get into philosophy too much. I tend to do that a lot, about philosophy, what we do. But I will say this. I saw this outside a church in Port Gibson, Mississippi. And I'm thinking, they got nothing to say, I got nothing to say. And that's why horticulture leaves me speechless over things that say you got to do that you don't got to do. You don't have to. You don't have to prune. Who's ever heard you're supposed to prune a rose above an outward facing 5-leaflet leaf? Have y'all heard that before? Got to prune. You can prune with cherry bombs. They bloom fine. You can browse a rose with a deer and it'll still come out and bloom. So horticulture rules sort of leave me flat. It's like rolling the rock up the mountain, watch it roll back down. The myth of Sisyphus, roll the rock up, roll back down. Eternal, ceaseless toil. Mowing grass is like that. As soon as you get a pruning Elaeagnus, y'all know Elaeagnus shrub makes my hair look good. As soon as you prune it, it needs pruning again. So why not just let it grow as a vine, which it is a vine, and enjoy it? See, so there's ways you can get around that. Green thumb. You can grow stuff in just plain dirt. You don't believe it? Look at farmers. Look at country folks. Before you could buy bags of Miracle-Gro potting soil. You can grow stuff, not much. If you add stuff to your dirt, you can grow more stuff. That's nice. This is Dr. Dirt. He added stuff to his plain old clay, and it ended up being better. He could grow more plants a lot easier that way. It's like making a BLT sandwich. Knowing how much mayonnaise to put on there without making it soggy. Slicing the tomatoes that doesn't squirt out the sides. Doesn't matter if it's mayonnaise or Miracle Whip, it really doesn't. Some of y'all are going to argue about that, but it really doesn't. A little salt and pepper, that's like fertilizer. If you could do a BLT sandwich, you could put together the ingredients it takes to have a home food, home garden. That's the whole point. I don't want to be remembered as a person who had a nice lawn, who watered plants. I want to frolic. And so I don't grow. I have a hose that's 11 feet long. Can't buy an 11-foot hose. You can get a 25-foot hose, but it was longer than I needed, and I didn't want to roll up 25 feet, so I cut it off 11 feet. Put my thumb over the end, squirt the cat. See, that's not lazy. That's just I don't want to waste time rolling up a hose when I don't need to. So pruning roses doesn't matter where you cut them. It doesn't. Yeah, it'll grow. Directional pruning, I get it, but you don't have to is what I'm saying. There's a fellow lived out from Black Hawk. You know where Black Hawk is? Between Kilmichael, between Vade and Greenwood. And you got to be going there because it ain't on the way anywhere. This man did that with a pair of hand shears. These are life size. And he passed away now. It's all grown up now. But that's a person in the middle of nowhere did something because it was in him and had to come out. Had to express himself. Anybody can do a meatball or a box or a bun or a cone. He did horses and cowboys and whales and sharks and alligators. Y'all know crepe myrtles? Isn't it great? How many of you think it's a sin to prune a crepe myrtle? Some of you do. Yeah, they do. You know, it's just like eyebrows. You know, you get eyebrows that grow in the wrong place. You just pluck out what you don't like, leave what you do like. Same thing with pruning. Exactly. There's reason for pruning crepe myrtle. They're not sacred plants. They're not sacred plants. Here's me hugging the oldest crepe myrtle in North America, planted in the 1700s, 1770s. I hugged it. I get crepe myrtles. I love them. They're great. But as soon as you do that, master gardeners are going to say, you're the devil. Crepe myrtle, which was a term that was invented by Steve Benner from Southern Living as a joke. This is at Colonial Williamsburg. It's been done like, I can show you in Shinto temples in Japan where they've been pollarded, it's called pollarded, for hundreds of years. They cut them back and they send out these long branches. Y'all know what I'm talking about? You know what they use the long branches for? Weaving their fences. Back before chain link and Home Depot. They would cut some back, send out real sprouts, and use those sprouts every 3 or 4 years, cut them off. They have uniform straight fence posts. Those called coppicing, grow up fence posts. And they did this to provide fodder for their cattle, but also weaving materials for the fences. It's a style called fist pruning in Japan. Here it is in the foreground. Oops. And sorry, I pushed the wrong button. In the foreground, nice and architectural. Look at that one in the back. Don't like it? Don't do it. But it's accepted. This one in the background has been pruned that way since 1918. It's at the headquarters of the American Horticultural Society. They're not stupid. It's a style. If you don't like it, it reminds me of this. The people who say you shouldn't prune crepe myrtles, I think they shouldn't prune theirs. When they say you shouldn't prune yours, they're the kind of people, you invite them to a party, they go into the bathroom and they turn your toilet paper roll around because they're not the way they do it. Okay? You roll the way you want. If you don't like it, don't do it. By the way, there's a real serious insect that's coming along called crepe myrtle bark scale. That's how big it is. And it really boogers crepe myrtles up. There's no cure for it. You can put systemic poison. I use the word poison. I don't have a problem with chemicals. Use wisely. But you put this systemic stuff on the ground, it soaks up into the plant, and the insects bite it and they die. And you have to do it year after year after year. And it's a material that's been banned in Europe because it kills bees. So anyway, there is a control for it, but it's every single year. Well, we got some other plants you can plant that are just as good. Find and follow your bliss. I'm not into mowing. I don't cut my hair, but I do shave. I know what to do. I shape up my little shrubbery here. I mow my grass. But if you want to do that, that's fine because it's a psychological thing. When you mow your grass, you look over your shoulder and see something you did that day. It makes you feel, I did that. And I understand that. And it makes the neighbors think you're okay, even if you're not. What I did this morning, I got up, I was on the road at 6:30 this morning, but my bed, my little cabin was made up. I put the pillows just right. I got the stripes in my quilt done just right. And I look back because I don't care what kind of day I have. When I get home, my place is neat. I know that I accomplished that. I'm okay for today. And that's the reason we mow grass. It's a psychological thing. You can have a smaller lawn. You don't have to have wall-to-wall grass. And if you can, when you look at this, you can feel the olive oil between your fingers. If you can't, it's because you've never done it. But this is a combination between homegrown tomatoes and basil. I borrowed the cucumbers from a neighbor who wasn't home for the picture. And I put the olive oil in there, and all of a sudden it is a composition, just like a garden, just like a garden. I can't grow tomatoes, by the way, because I'm lazy. I don't know. I can tell you what to do, but I plant them every year. I plant tomatoes because they give me hope. And they may never do. And knowing they may not do, I have to enjoy the process rather than the product. So instead of being frustrated because I don't make, I take a Sharpie pen out in my garden, I put smiley faces on them. Because if that's all I got, that's good enough. I'm enjoying the process. That's the whole idea. Home sun tea, not that good, but don't you feel better than anybody when you do it? Don't you feel a little smug? Psychological. Feeding birds, you can go out there and come back before they even know you're out there. The mosquitoes, taking pictures, moving around, getting the right angle. All of these things are part of gardening. You know, when you scrub your fingernails so hard that your fingertips tingle, that's part of gardening. And we just don't think about that. And that's what slow gardening is all about. Savor what you do. Savor it. I have a rain gauge because I don't trust a weather stud. I go out there and see how much it rained in my yard. And that connects me. I feel things, I see things, I smell things. All these different senses by just checking and intellectually, I'm engaged with not just my garden, but with the climate. Little things like that. If you can scratch a cat, a strange cat, you can't just go up and grab a cat. Or maybe it's just me. You got to act like you don't care. You got to just sort of put your hand out there, and it'll come over and roll. By the time you get to where you can scratch a strange cat, you're relaxed, and the cat's relaxed. And that's what gardening is like. You don't just attack a garden. You take your time, you enjoy it, you savor it. Your simple tools where you're the only moving part. What does this look like to y'all? Anybody know what it is? Anybody want to guess? Homemade burglar bars. Burglar bars. Why not? You want to keep people out of your thing? Why do you have to just get the store-bought stuff? You got somebody with a welder? Make some homemade burglar bars. You can have fun doing the stupidest things. Stupidest things. It's called accessorizing. I tend to over-accessorize a little bit. And I've seen some really cool stuff. Big sculptures, that look like wildflowers. You put those out there, and all of a sudden dandelions aren't weeds anymore. They're part of the sculpture. You're interpreting them. You could have little things like put a wagon wheel. You want to grow some weeds in your yard, put a wagon wheel out there and just leave it alone. Let your neighbors get through yapping about you. What's up with the wheel? And then plant some stuff around it. And as it grows up, it's sort of like putting a frog in cold water and slowly upping the temperature. Your neighbors don't realize you've done something out there. And you can get away with murder once you get people used to the idea that you're doing it on purpose. On purpose. You can get tomato cages, spray paint them different colors if you want to. It's just accessorizing. I've got a saint in my yard. Any Catholics here? Yeah, I'm not, but I appreciate this particular saint. His name is Saint Fiacre, F-I-A-C-R-E. Not the guy with the bird on his hand. Who was that? St. Francis. This guy, he's got flowers and a shovel. Saint Fiacre, he's the official patron saint of gardening. And I don't put it out there because of hagiology and the saints and all that. I put it out there because he represented people who share their food and their flowers and their herbs with strangers coming by. And so when he's in my little garden, you take him out there, that's a nice combination of plants. But when he's out there, it's a focal point that connects me with people who share with each other down through the centuries. Like looking at a picture of my kids. That's not really my kids, it's a picture. Well, St. Fiacre represents the spirit of gardener sharing stuff. And so I enjoy him. What's that? I think that was a starts with an A. It's not a stilby. It's not a stilby. I can't remember what it is. It's got little leafy things and flowers on stems. Okay. How many? I've written a bunch of books, but I can't remember a lot of stuff. I write down. I don't remember. But spirea. If you cut spirea to the ground and let it do this every year, it does this. People treat spirea like a bush. If you cut it to the ground, it sends out these long things. You got just eruption, fireworks of white flowers in the springtime, if you want to. I saw this in a garden one time and said, that's nice, but I can't afford it. It's a Victorian metal thing. It probably costs $450. Can't afford it. But I like it. It's not a real bird, right? But it'll look like a bird, make you think about birds. Well, I can't afford it. So I put my grandmother's concrete chicken in my yard. Granny, the zinnia gal. When she died, everybody was arguing about her house. What are we going to do with the old car? Who's going to get the chifferow? I went out in her yard and I sold her chicken. I put it on a plinth in my yard because when I look at that, I don't see a cheap, concrete, beat-up chicken. I see my grandmother and her zinnias. And when neighbors go by and say, Rushing's got a concrete chicken in his yard, I'm thinking, shut up. That's my grandmother. See, so when people do stuff that you don't understand, it may be that it's meaningful to them and you can just relax and let them do that. It's okay. See, that's the whole point. Rubber ducks just important china vases. It's possible to over-accessorize. I'll grant you. It is possible to over-accessorize. I'm not hating on this guy. His name is Fisher. He lives in Itabena. But he's out there painting all the time and doing stuff. He's engaged instead of just sitting in his easy chair watching TV. He's out there. I think that's important. But you can get $1 million worth of embellishment from a single well-placed pot. No question about it. I've got glass in my garden. This is a sculpture named Andrew Young. He did that for me for my yard. I've been to Dale Chihuly's place in Seattle. I know fancy garden art. I know high-end glass. But I can't afford something like that, so this one I do. Okay? And it's the same thing. It's just glass in the garden. Is it fancy? No. But do you like it? Maybe not. But is it okay? Sure. It's what I call redneck Chihuly. If y'all know Dale Chihuly, okay? Same thing. All we're doing is holding glass up to the sky so its colors can sing. That's all we're doing. It's not voodoo and all that kind of stuff. Here's one of mine. I use it for a tomato cake. Here's what it looked like winter before last when it snowed so much. How many of y'all just honestly really don't care for this? You're scared to raise your hand up? It's easy to do. It's not hard to accessorize. I'm not a tree hugger. I tried it, just okay. It's all right. But I do think it's important that we do things for other than just our own self. And I think planting flowers out there is good for bees and butterflies and hummingbirds and all that. I think that's a good thing. Some people just don't like it. It just makes them feel creepy. And I get that. So put it on the other side of your yard so you can see it without having to get up close to it. I get that. A little pollinator thing. I think the number one easiest flower to grow for grown-ups or kids is plain old zinnias. By the way, anybody know the Latin name for zinnia? Anybody? Zinnia? See, it's not so hard. Magnolia is another good Latin name to know. See, Latin's not. But anyway, I've got some. I waited till today, maybe this afternoon, maybe tomorrow, because we thought it was going to freeze night before last night. You just work some dirt up and you just scatter the seeds on top and just wet them down. You don't even have to just wet them down. And then come back the next day and just wet them down again. You kind of keep the seeds moist. And within about 3 or 4 days, you got little plants. So water them a little bit deeper and then skip a day. And then a little bit deeper and skip a week. And next thing you know, you've got these out in your yard. Cut flowers, good, easy to grow. And then we got this little native fly. It's called the hoverfly. It looks like a yellow jacket. That's a native pollinator. We want the big butterflies. These are the workhorses. And if you don't have them, it's because you don't make them welcome. Attracting plants, critters with flowers is a good thing, but they have to have a place to live. And this is where a lot of our pollinators live, in wood piles and things like that. If you have something like this anywhere in your yard, you can have all these little holes in it with pollinators. And in the background, it looks kind of weedy, but that's where lightning bugs come from. If you don't have stuff like this, you can't have lightning bugs or dragonflies, see? So in other words, create a little area and then make it look like it, put some birdhouses on sticks to make it look like you're doing it on purpose. That's the point. Let's get through all this. Oh. Have a little girl squeal in me. I can't say, here's what it sounds like. Whee! I can't do it. But if I get a spider on me, this little girl squeal comes out. And it's loud and really, really high pitched. It's a sound I can't fake. It's great. But I leave her alone. Sometimes I get a stick and I move her and put her on a different thing so I don't have to walk through her web. And it gives me the creeps just thinking about it. But she got that big eating stuff I'd rather not have. Worms? You bet. I love this kind of stuff. Anyway, this is the point I'm trying to make. I think it's important for us to do that. Easy to share, easy to propagate. This is how you root gardenias. Jar of water, 3 weeks. A cutting in 3 weeks in water. We have rose seminars in the cemetery in Jackson. This is some master gardeners. And this is the kind of rose cutting she makes. She doesn't use rooting powder. She just snips off 6 of them in some pretty good dirt. Rooting powder helps, but you don't need it. See, so we give seminars on growing roses, American floral emblem, in a cemetery. Let me skip past that because I want to get to my point. Plant swaps. Here we go. This is the whole point of my talk. It's just going to take a few minutes. Which of these do you think is the Maverick gardener? Can you tell? There's somebody different in every neighborhood, whether they express it or not. It may be in their backyard, it may be in their den. They might have lots of stuff in their kitchen window. But there's this in all of it. By the way, how many of you think that's a woman or a man? How many of you think it's a woman who did that? How many of you think it's a guy? I'd be curious to find out why. I think it's a guy because they don't care this leaning down like that. He doesn't care this flopped over. He doesn't care. It keeps the rain from falling there too. Anyway, this is the cottage garden I saw in California. A really nice little cottage garden. It's got a white fence. It's got an arbor. It's got a rose. Right? Y'all get that? Cute little cottage garden. White fence, arbor, rose. It was designed by a designer, constructed by a landscape contractor, maintained by a mowing blow crew. But the lady lives there. She walks around with this glass of wine in her hand. She talks about her garden. And she didn't do any of it. Well, okay, white fence, arbor, rose, right? Well, here's one in Jackson, Mississippi. Okay, white fence, arbor, rose. I would submit that it's the same design, same elements of design. I would submit that is a better garden because the lady did it herself. She has to hold her head up. We see wildflower gardens with no grass, and it's okay. It's cute. It's quaint. We know the lady. She's all right. She's not crazy. But none of us do that because we're trying to fit in with everybody else. And then we see gardens like this in New Orleans. Well, this is the only yard they've got, so they overdo stuff, the balconies and all. People are trying to get the most out of the space that they've got. Even in England, tell us about English gardens. Well, there are nutty people in England who over-accessorize too, because it's a personality type, not an education thing. I know that lady real well. School gardens. Kids don't care about stuff. They want color and texture, all sorts of. It's easy for kids to do stuff because they haven't been taught that you got to straighten up yet. So they tend to paint. They use a lot of different. Those are tires. They use lots of and that is the type of thing that diggers being determined independent gardeners. We end up like this because we never outgrew the wonder and experimenting and seeing things simply. See, so somewhere when we're about 9 or 10 years old, we start paying attention to what other people think. We learn how to stand in line and play well with others, and we lose our ability to relax and enjoy simple things. Some of us do. So, determined independent gardener. That's what a digger is. I see them all over the place. This is a friend of mine in Oklahoma. By the way, you can tell a digger because of different things. First of all, their hose is always laying out there. Second of all, you typically can't see their yard from the street. You're looking at the back of their yard. If you go up and stand at their front door and look out, the garden is laid out from their point of view. So we're looking at it backwards. It looks messy, like my garden. But also, one of the classic things about a digger is you've got a row of pots of plants that are begging to be planted, waiting for somebody to plant these plants. It's like the purgatory for plants. They're looking for a plant, and they may be out there so long that the plant died, and you can't read the tag anymore. Any of y'all have rows of plants that need to be planted? Yeah, that's right. You're trying to see. So there's a lot of symptoms, and I get into that. You might be a digger if, and it's real simple things. When I first moved into my yard, my landscape architect friend, he drew this is what it looked like when I moved in. There's a street down here, my neighbor's yard. That's my driveway, my neighbor's yard. You could park my pickup truck and my Jeep front to front, and that's the size of my garden. Y'all with me on this? That's what I hear, the wall-to-wall grass. And I'm thinking, so I got rid of all that. This is what it looks like now, same garden. I pulled up the sidewalk. Instead of 9 steps, a straight shot 9 steps, take a step up, a couple of steps, it eases its way up to these decks. And up here looking back out, you see all this stuff. And I tend to mix stuff up. This is what my garden looked like 2 weeks ago. The mustard, the kale, my little bottle tree. Now, I want to mention something about dirt. I'm not going to get too much into it because this is kind of a long presentation to begin with. This book started out to be about me and dirt, 10 years. We looked at gardens and we swapped plants. They came to my house every Friday morning, brought a bouquet, drank some tea while my wife was getting ready for work and getting the kids ready for school. And we drove in, did a radio program, and then afterwards we drove around looking at yards all over the place. We did this all over the country. And I learned so much about him because I had gotten tight in college. Horticulture took the gardening out of me and made it all about efficiency and production. And you got to do this. And I can't look at a lawn now without seeing problems with it. Okay? He taught me to relax a little bit and just be more of a gardener. And he had a wonderful garden. And he welcomed everybody. This is his little office back in there. It's a little shaded place. And that's what his house looked like from the street. What you can't see is it goes on and on and on and on. And just dirt, no hose. He watered stuff with the bucket for rainwater. And he had a fantastic garden. He taught me that you can have a garden without a lot of horticulture. And this is one of the bouquets he brought. Every week of the year, a bouquet. And he taught me that it's possible to do this without getting all balled up in it. Rick Griffin is a friend of mine, landscape architect. He designed my garden. He's been in Southern Living 37 times. His work has been in Southern Living 36 times. He lives in a gated community. You have to look at a guy, rolls the window down, a guard looks at a thing and seeing if you're supposed to come in before he opens the gate. That's the kind of neighborhood Rick lives in. But in his backyard, he's a digger. He had a neighbor who was too close, neighbor's right here. He just put some posts in a mirror and made it look like, and that's a reflection of his yard. As far as it made his yard look bigger, but he said, I don't want to look at my neighbors. I want the neighbor to look at me. He just, like dirt, he just happened to be a landscape architect. And this is part of his garden. He loves it. But because he's a landscape architect, people say, oh, that's nice. Well, you see the same thing in my yard. People saying, well, next thing you know, he's going to have a chicken, that concrete chicken. And this is Rick Griffin's yard, upscale. But he's okay with expressing himself. He even lines his walkways with upside-down wine bottles. This is another friend of mine who lives around the corner from me. Her name is Susie Cranston. When her son passed away, I guess it's been about 15 years ago now, she expressed her grief through her garden. She has something in bloom every week of the year. She always has, and she lives in a nice neighborhood, suburban neighborhood. But what makes her a digger, she tends to over-accessorize with birdhouses. Lots of birdhouses all the time. And people like it because she's nice and it's clean, it's cute and all. But she does all sorts of crazy stuff that a lot of people just would have a hard time getting along with. Birdhouses. You don't have to have 140. One is enough. 3 is better. When you can stop at 3. Susie. Another neighbor of mine, Jenny Nelson, she's from Jamaica. I've interviewed her on my radio program several times. She's a retired nurse, mental health profession. And when she gets home in her yard, it looks like this. She has these kind of flowers blooming in her yard every fall. Okay, but from the street, let me back it up. I don't have a picture from the street, but it just looks like a jungle. Got grass, 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 jungle, grass, grass, grass. That's what her street's like. And she's okay with it. She says the place she can go when she's having not so great a mental health day in her garden. This fellow lives 4 blocks from me. His name is Perry Davis. And it looks like a garden club lady on peyote. Okay. By the way, I don't remember the garden clubs in Mississippi. But he's got that yard. And it doesn't seem to fit in the neighborhood, but what's more important, it doesn't seem to fit with him. He says, do I look like I'm supposed to have a garden like this? No. And he had to get over it. He was raised by gardeners, and this is how he gets therapy when he's home from work. He putters with flowers, and he shares with all they all speak to him. He said the first time he had a hummingbird in his yard, the older lady across the street burst into tears because she thought that they weren't real. She'd never seen a hummingbird before. She burst into tears. And another friend of mine, I live in a cool neighborhood called Fondren. And these are just a few blocks apart. She has a horse in her yard. A horse. And then the last one I want to mention is this guy right here. He's a good friend of mine. His name is Jesse Yancey. Now he has a little corner garden. This is what it looked like when he started. Not his property. It's across the street from the apartment he lives in. Not his property. Didn't have permission. He started a little at a time, adding stuff, upping the temperature a little at a time, and finally the people who own the parking lot, they don't use it. They've got parking on the other side. They said, it's okay, it's all right. They even ran a garden hose out there and some electricity for his twinkly lights. So he started out guerrilla gardening on somebody else's property, and before you know it, it looks like this. And let me back it up. You see the street sign there and how little grass there is, and this is what it looks like now. But the cool part about it, he has something in bloom every week of the year. He eats at it just like dirt, just like me. We're completely different backgrounds. He's as gay as you can be. He doesn't really care. He's out there. He has a gay pride flag every now and then. And he's all right with it. But he grows stuff in mixtures and combinations and little accessories and logs and stuff because it makes him feel better. And it's made it so comfortable that he has what's called, y'all have these little corner bookstores, corner libraries. Have y'all seen those? You put a box on a stick and put books in it and come and go. He has a corner herbery, little corner herbery. He grows rosemary and oregano and basil for all the neighbors to come share. And he spends time showing children how to plant, how to divide. He has them transplanting stuff. They come in, they get rosemary and cut flowers, they take bouquets and all, and he is making it feel them okay to be around bees and butterflies and a lot of weirdness. He is an outreach for gardening on property that's not even his. That's a digger. I've got maybe 3 slides left, but I want to throw out this. Who knows what this flower is? It's an old-fashioned plant. Some of you may have been raised with it. You put the seeds out in the fall. They have tall spikes of pastels, pink or white or blue, little clusters of flowers. And each flower is about the size of a nickel, maybe a quarter. Tall stem. It's called larkspur. old-fashioned larkspur. And I've seen it, larkspur, what's that? Larkspur. You grow it?
No, I just didn't hear what you said.
Yeah, and you just throw the seeds out in the fall, and then it reseeds itself, comes back year after year after year. Old-fashioned plant. Well, what a lot of people don't realize, if you look at the middle of it, every single one of them has got a rabbit in it. You see the rabbit? The only reason I know that, the only reason you know it, because somebody showed it to me and I showed it to y'all. Somebody showed it. So little things like the rabbit and a larkspur that makes little kids smile and makes their parents just melt because they're connecting with something that never thought about before. It's like looking at a little wildflower in your lawn, a little weed. Look at the weeds up close. A lot of them look like little orchids. And you're more likely to mow around a patch. By the way, it's important to mow around a patch of clover in your yard because that's where the Easter bunny lays the eggs. Anyway, keepers of the flame. The plants, the styles, the sharing, the sense of community, the local flavors, the history, the continuity, all of those kind of things, like this plant swap, represent something that is lost in horticulture. It's lost in fast food. It's lost in society a lot of times. And this is a way where even suburbia can start getting it back by sharing a certain plant that they all grow. Next year, maybe another plant. First thing you know, even the most wall-to-wall Stepford type of neighborhood can look like an English landscape by having things that do well. That's the whole idea. Again, doesn't matter who you are, who your mom and them are, it's important to share. I always end up with this because it just will let people know I didn't know I was going to grow up to be this way. But I'm cheerful. Thank goodness for Wellbutrin. But I'm cheerful because when I go home today, I know that my plants didn't freeze last night and I've got zinnia seeds to plant. And I'm not going to have to do anything to have cut flowers and butterflies. And I can take those seeds in the fall, flowers, cut them off, put them in a bag, shake them up, and go around the neighborhood, just throwing them in other people's yards. That's what it's all about. Anyway, I know we talked, by the way, this is the last picture in this book, and this is Jesse Yancey, the guy who gardened across the street, because this is the way, if you're a digger, people see you. I really appreciate the opportunity, y'all. Now we're going to do this plant swap, and anybody have any questions real quick about stuff? No? Everybody's got to pee? Yes, ma'am.
Solution for clay soil.
Clay soil, dig it up, spread some. No. It's not easy. It's not easy. Dig it up. And right now, a couple of days after good rain, it digs easy. When it's wet, it's clumpy. When it's dry, it's like concrete. But there's a little window of opportunity a few days after good rain, and clay turns over like chocolate cake. Take a shovel and just turn it upside down. And then spread some bark over it and rake it in. It's like adding crumbled crackers to a bowl of chili. Got too much chili, got too many crackers, mix them together. And about that proportion, 1 or 2 handsful of crackers to a bowl of chili, you got how much stuff to add to your dirt down pat. And once you do that, get it down deep, air and water go down deep, and you find that those worms start coming up. And if you put mulch like grass clippings or leaves and bark on top, worms will come and eat that, and they will keep digging it for you from then on. But you just got to get it started. It's like a sheet cake. Somebody's got to dig in. And once you dig in, everybody can take it from there. Other questions? Yep. Yes, sir.
So your truck bed, how do you water that without getting the bottom of your truck rotted out?
Well, I don't have my little one with me. I started out with a bag of potting soil with holes punched in it. See, you didn't see that. What I did was I had a metal box made, a waterproof metal box. It's higher towards the cab, smaller because the wind blows stuff. And I had some holes drilled in let's say this is my truck, and this is the box sitting in the back. The truck's the back of the back of my cab. I had a metal box and I drilled holes along the edge of it. So when I go, it shoots water out that way instead of seeping straight down. But I also had put a rubberized truck liner. So when it rains, stuff comes out of these holes onto the rubber mat and shoots out. Plus it's a Ford, it's 1988. It's going to be rusty. But anyway, that's what you do. It's just like if you have a potted plant, if you're making a pot with a 5-gallon milk jug, don't put holes in the bottom. Put around the edge, around the outside edge near the bottom. And that way it doesn't leave a stain on your deck. Any other questions? Okay, here's the way plant swap works. Got some cool plants, sedum and rose. Got a, this is called sedum milk. Who brought this? It's got bigger leaves though in the summertime. It's a type of sedum called autumn joy. It's a good plant. It'll die down the ground and come back up every year. In Canada, it melts to the ground. We've got this little plant. It's called Mother of Thousands. It doesn't look like much, but it's going to be about this big. And every leaf has got little plants growing along the edge of the leaf, right? Every little plant. And matter of fact, so this is the cool one. I got some aloe. This is a plant called toad lily. Does the pot come with it? Does the pot come with it, or do they just get the plant? Well, I want this. Anyway, toad lily is a perennial. Dies around, it comes back up. It's got the most interesting, weird little flowers on it. In the shade, right? It grows in the shade. Some sun. Got catmint, our native oak leaf hydrangea, which is such an incredible plant. Got a rose here, the fairy, probably the best ever blooming little rose you can have. The Queen's Tear, bromeliad. Got oregano, a little. Who brought this? Have any of y'all grown this before? And the leaves fall off and grow a whole new plant. Each leaf grows a little plant. It'll grow in an urn in the cemetery. And it's a succulent. Uh-oh, got some more plants. Cool. And then I hope this is marigold, not marijuana. Who brought this? No, I don't want to know. I don't want to know.
Orange
Cosmos. Lots of, yes, and butterflies. Orange cosmos. Got 4 plants in here. I know it's not marigolds because you squeeze the leaves. Marigolds leaves smell like dirty socks. And got some more little plants here. Uh-oh. What is it? Is it basil? Basil. Cool. Basil, good little plant. And it's time. I'm officially saying that we're past frost for the year. You can plant your tomatoes today. I would have said that last week. Everybody said, wait till Good Friday. But we always had that cold snap. We always have it. And everybody always acts like it never happened before. It happens it's happened so much that there's a word for a phrase. It's called blackberry winter. Have a warm spell, everybody plants their tomatoes, get a cold snap when the blackberries are blooming. Okay, what is this? Oh, mullein. Who brought this? Big leaves, and it good for, and it'll make a big plant and a spike about this tall with little yellow flowers on it. And the leaves get big. I tell you something else is good for. We call it camper's friend. Camper's friend. In case you don't have any toilet paper. First. Oh, yes. And then I know what this is, but who brought this? It gets this big when it blooms, right? It's a type of rudbeckia, which is it's a perennial black-eyed Susan. It makes a nice big clump, big flowers, blooms, pure yellow. It doesn't have the little cone in the middle. It is a great one. Does it reseed itself or you just divide it? It's a cool, it makes a nice perennial. It comes back every year. So whatever number you brought, that's the plant you get, like it or not. And I appreciate the folks here at the MAC so much. This is my 3rd time to do a lecture. This is kind of a weird one, I guess, but I guess all of them are kind of weird. And it's a good opportunity. They can have an Easter egg hunt a little bit later. They got hot dogs outside. And if you go upstairs and look at the exhibit, they even have one of my little bottle trees up there. I feel real special. And that's it. If anybody's interested in books, when University Press of Mississippi published it, they did my first book. This is my last gardening book I'll ever do, not making that up. And the reason it's small, because I said I want a book that sells for exactly $20, not $24.95. And they said, well, how many pages, how many pictures? I said, I don't care, $20. And it's full of stuff, including how to make a flower pot out of a tire. And it's got all these details about all these diggers in here, a whole lot about Dr. Dirt, whole lot about him. And it's got some stuff about my own garden. The last thing I want to mention is the glossary at the back isn't gardening terms. It doesn't have perennial in it or dividing. It's got words like absurdism. It's the terms that we need to feel good about ourselves and get along with the neighbors. Absurdism, finding humor or calling out ridiculous behavior when faced with unreasonable concepts or things. Examples, calling a plant either good or bad when it's just a plant. And somebody saying a saint statue is okay, but a gnome is not. Okay, so that's the kind of stuff. It's got fast food gardening, guerrilla gardening, horticulture. And anyway, that's kind of a plant blindness. The last one I'll share with you. The word play is in my glossary. It's an official term. Imaginative activity done for pleasure or whimsy without regard to reality or consequences. Play. That's how diggers learn. We play. Thank y'all. Appreciate it.